You're listening to the ESO Network, your station for all things geek.
In a world where podcasters talk about the same old pop culture topics, two heroes must rise to bring forth a new era of podcast entertainment. The Cigar Nerds Podcast. Movie reviews, pop culture debates, news, science, and even beer reviews. We're stranger than Stranger Things and funnier than an evil sewer clown. CigarNerdPodcast.com. We all smoke down here, Georgie.
Hello, and welcome again to the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. I am your host, The Monster, back to give you a very, very, very special podcast. How special is this podcast? Very. Basically, I found again my old disc of my very first episode 0 of the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast. So, when you listen to the podcast, this is going back to July 15th, 2006. So, if you do your math, come July, it will be 12 years old since my first podcast, which is about as old as my son will be. So, you'll hear a younger version of me, but still basically doing the stuff that I'm doing right now. As you will hear, I'm explaining as to how my ideas came together about doing the podcast, and then I actually do a podcast. So I do have a big 3 sci-fi news items, or big 3 sci-fi items that I do talk about. Plus I do a very big trio conversation with my wife and Mr. Gene, and we're talking about our top 10 villains of all time. Now, just to give you a heads up, the quality is okay, not great, but it's okay. 2, it cuts off at the very end with Mr. Gene talking. But we're close to the very end anyway, so from what I remember, I think maybe another 5 or 10 minutes left on the podcast, but honestly, I don't remember any more other than what you're going to be hearing today. So I do apologize, but again, I was lucky enough to able to recover this much. So now, come with me back in time, 12 years ago. Take it away, me. Who else?
Listening to the Monster Sci-Fi Show podcast, hosted by your very own Monster. Hi everyone, this is my very first podcast, and I decided to finally do this while I'm still in school working my master's for my MBA in marketing, and I've been wanting to do something in this genre of science fiction for a very long time. I'm very passionate about the genre. I've grown up since 1977 with the very first, of course, Star Wars movie, Episode 3, listening to soundtracks, reading Starlog magazines, Cinescapes, Fantastique, reading the next-gen novels, Voyager, DS9, and just really embracing everything that there is about the genre that's out there. So finally has come to the point that I need to put all this knowledge into good use somehow, and for you to kind of benefit from what I've learned, and in turn, I want to learn from you. I want to learn what you like to read, what you like to listen to, what is the latest thing you saw on DVD or in the movies. So right now, even though I'm kind of winding down almost with school, I haven't been really actively watching as much as I should be, and I'm trying to do a lot of catch-up in my field, so to speak, because I really want to be as knowledgeable about what I really had loved, growing up. But unfortunately, with responsibilities, does not come with power, but it does come with a family, which right now, I just had a brand new baby son who was just born, just about 3 weeks ago, actually, from today. So I've been very sleepless, to say the least, in this past couple of weeks. But nonetheless, I've been thinking about what it is I wanted to do as far as content-wise, and definitely I want to talk about upcoming sci-fi events or related topics that I think really would be kind of set this show different from other shows, because other shows do specific shows which are great, and I like, for example, I love the Combat Information Center, which is nothing but Battlestar Galactica, and the commentary is for every week. There's a new commentary on that episode, which is great. But the problem lies is that if the show is over, which is currently right now, then we kind of have to wait until October to see the episode. So I thought I do want to talk about Battlestar Galactica, which is one of my all-time favorites, and I will get into a little bit more of a topic later on in this podcast. Specifically, I want to do a little piece on Bear McCreary, who is the composer. Right now, he does have a new CD for Season 2 coming out, or actually should be coming out right now, and which I'm going to talk about from an interview in the Battlestar Galactica magazine, which I really like reading, what he thinks about what is it that he does for the show, and a really interesting concept that I liked about how he puts the music together. So I'm going to talk about that, as well as play a clip of his music so you get an idea of what is it that I'm really happy about his music, and for why it really doesn't fit sci-fi, but it works really well in Battlestar Galactica. Other news I'm going to talk about is going to be a couple of things on Star Trek that's coming up. Not necessarily new Star Trek material, but just Star Trek related things that I think you might be interested to keep an eye out for. As well as I'm going to talk about the Transformers, which it's going to be actually less than a year from now. But I saw the trailer, and I want to talk about that in a little bit, as a little bit more of the history and what I thought about that and so forth. And after that, we're going to delve into the main topic of this podcast, which is I was watching Bravo, and they did a top 20 of heroes and villains and vixens. And I thought that might be a good topic to talk about. So I invited my friend Jean, who I've known just as long as I know my wife, because we all work together, and decided to do our version, but just do a top 10 of just villains, heroes, and compare that with Bravo. So we talked about that at great length, so it's about almost an hour long. So just be prepared that it's going to be pretty lengthy. But I think what's great about that is that we do have really good ideas of what heroes and villains should be as far as our definitions would be, and have really good characters that match up to those definitions. So I definitely want you to let me know what you think of that in the show, of course, overall. As far as content or what needs to be improved or what you've liked. But any information, if you want to just send me a quick email, you can send it to Monster Sci-Fi Show at gmail.com. So any questions, comments, please let me know. So I'm going to take a quick little break, and then I'm going to start going into Star Trek and Star Trek and Transformers, and then also talk about Bear McCreary, okay? I'll be right back. Thanks. All right, folks, I'm going to discuss one of my favorite subjects, which is, of course, Star Trek. But unfortunately, as many of us know, that Star Trek unfortunately is no longer on the air, which is unfortunate, but I think the rest is quite needed for this series. I do want to do a really good Star Trek analysis, plus other things that have been going on, but just some brief information that I wanted to touch upon. Since, of course, Enterprise, the last series, was canceled, and also the last Star Trek movie, Nemesis, really didn't do all that well in the box office, they figured in Paramount Studios was to give it a break and go ahead and look at options later on down the road. Now, lo and behold, J.J. Abrams, who is the creator of Alias, which I have started recently. I'm up to season 4 on all the DVDs, so that's another podcast altogether. Lost is another great series that he's also created, which I have not seen, but since it's on DVD, I'm going to try to catch up on that as well. But I did purposely want to see the latest Mission Impossible 3 movie with Tom Cruise. Not because I'm a big Tom Cruise fan, but because I wanted to see how J.J. Abrams handled himself as far as in a big picture screen sense. And he did a great job. And I thought that since we already found out, and of course before the release of the movie, that he was going to produce and direct a new Star Trek series or a new movie. The concept so far that's going around is going to be the old the Starfleet Academy days, and of course, you know, everyone wants to see that happen. They want to see a younger version of Kirk and Spock and McCoy. So it's giving what the fans want, and I think given what J.J. Abrams has done so far, I think he probably will be the best candidate to regenerate the series as a whole. And the latest news that I heard so far was that Matt Damon, as all people, is going to might be the new Captain Kirk. Supposedly, William Shatner has given his blessing for Damon to take over the role of Shatner. So I'm kind of curious if this is going to be officially what's going to happen in the future for us as far as seeing a new Captain Kirk. Who knows? But on that note, I did find something that was really great, and I'm a big fan of Comedy Central, and I love their Celebrity Roast. And coming up on August 20th at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, William Shatner is going to get the dubious award of being ripped apart and shredded like to no one's business. So I really think it's going to be a lot of fun to see, you know, and poke fun at him. And he does, to my opinion, does not really take himself too seriously in regards to what he's done as far as his body of work. But I think that considering he's ripe for material, since we love to make fun of him and his ever popular, get a life quote that he threw back at the fans, I think it's about time that the fans got back at him, so to speak. So I think that's going to be a lot of fun to see coming up in August. The other thing that I noticed, and this is something that, as a collector, I love collecting toys and posters and games and books and all that, but I'm one big pack rat, and I really don't have room to have any more stuff, especially since now I have one of my rooms, or this is now going to be my son's room, as well as my daughter. I have no more room for stuff, so I really can't afford this. But had I had the room, I would have loved to go to New York. Coming up on the I think it's going to be October 5th, 6th, and 7th in New York. Christie's, the auction house, is going to do a 40 years of Star Trek, the collection, which they're going to auction off items, actual props, and as well as uniforms of all the Star Trek series that they've had as far as their history. And I really would love to be there, but the best I can do right now is just go to their website at Christie's.com/special_sites/Star Trek, and that's going to give you at least information as to what items they're going to have available to be sold. Like, for example, there's a Star Trek Voyager purple jumpsuit that 7 of 9 had worn, which I know a couple of fans I should say, would jump at the chance to buy this just because it's 7 of 9's uniform. But we're looking at about anywhere from price range about $2,000 to $3,000 estimated for the price on that. So that's way out of my price range. But nonetheless, I'm sure it's going to fetch a good price for that just because. Something a little bit closer to my budget would be the Star Trek Generation Encounter at Farpoint screenplay. That's going to have a lot more information as far as the shooting scripts, and I think it's really well worth it. But again, we're looking at the higher side, about $300 to $500 that is expected to fetch. But nonetheless, I think any collector would miss this event, basically, because I think having to be, an owner of the original props, no collector would do without this. The other thing is that you can do a pre-order of catalogs, which unfortunately it's pretty expensive considering, but there's a 2-volume set that's going for about $90, and then there's a special limited box set that's going for $500. So who knows? I mean, I do have a birthday coming up, and I might just afford just a 2-volume catalog set. So, honey, my wife, love of my life, my birthday's coming out, so I figured, hey, I'm going to drop you a suggestion since you're not sure what to get me. Hint, hint. Okay, I'm going to move on to the Transformers. I've been kind of keeping an eye on more information as it comes out. The other day, I watched the trailer of the Transformers, in which it starts off with a rocket or a space mission is going to Mars, in which a rover is deployed on Mars, scours for life, and through its point of view, something hovers over or comes over it and knocks it over, and it seems to be some kind of life form or some kind of robotic life form, which anyone who's really followed the series of Transformers all the way back, from the early 80s, will realize that they didn't come from Mars. The Decepticons and Autobots did not come from Mars. They came from Cybertron. But right before I was doing this podcast, I was really happy to find out that Michael Bay noted in his website, michaelbay.com, that he is not going to use the footage of Mars, and any shots that are in that trailer are not going to be in the movie. So that's a big relief, because I really want to see Transformers do well. I'm not sure about the concept of seeing, live action in our setting and see how it could be pulled off. Animation-wise, I think the series on TV, as well as the Transformers the movie, was great. But making it to now a full movie production, I'll give it a chance. I really want to see this done because, again, having grown up on Transformers, I really want to see, the big screen treatment given to that. The one thing that I did find out, what's going to happen to one of the characters, for anyone who's a big fan, Bumblebee used to be a Volkswagen, and I'm not sure for whatever reason that the Volkswagen Beetle did not want to be associated with the Transformers, but he is now going to be transformed into a 2008-2009 Camaro. So that's going to be kind of interesting news. There is a link that, unfortunately, I don't have a website yet, so I do apologize. But if you go to leftlanennews.com/2006/05/31/ and it's going to be new Chevy Camaro to star Transformer movie. And each word is going to be, will have a hyphen in between. If you go to that link, you'll see the actual pictures of the car they're going to be doing for Bumblebee, which is kind of cool. So I'm kind of curious how that's going to all transform, so to speak, with the Transformers. The other thing, of course, is that Optimus Prime is going to be a fire truck, and Starscream, one of the Decepticons, is going to be an F-22 Raptor. So I'm really kind of curious as to how they're going to kind of give this more of an updated feeling to a lot of the characters that we've known back all the way in the 80s. the one thing that I liked about the series was they had the main characters, but they spawned off like Decepticons. They had Destructicons, and the Autobots had Dinobots. Dinobots were my favorite out of the lot, and my favorite out of the Dinobots, which is a lot of people's favorites, is Grimlock. Grimlock was a T-Rex, a robotic T-Rex, who used to talk like this. Me, Grimlock, leader of the Dinobots. So I just loved him so much that actually when the series came out, I was playing football, I would have that as my call sign on my back of my shirt. So every time, I would talk like Grimlock during the series, they were playing football. It's just make everyone laugh. But I just love Grimlock. I mean, he's kind of dopey and stupid, but I just love the character so much, more so than Optimus Prime. But enough of that. So we talked about Star Trek, we talked about Transformers. The other segment I wanted to talk about before we go into the Bravo list and the top 10 villains and heroes list was Bear McCreary, who is the composer for the Battlestar Galactica series. And what I really liked about hearing his music, as far as the series was that, as I mentioned before, it's different. It's not the traditional orchestral music, but it's more rhythmic, more tribal, more grounded, in a sense that it's, and the best way he described it was that since it's more like an earth heritage, that he used music from different parts of the world and combined it all together. So like he said, and this is a quote from him, the idea was to take instruments from all over the world and combine them together in a way that had never been done before to create otherworldly feel. My philosophy has always felt that Earth's heritage is somehow connected to the show, and it makes sense that the ancient music from our world would have a relationship with the music in their world, meaning Battlestar Galactica. This idea goes back from the miniseries, from the original concept by Michael Reimer, the director, and who worked it with Richard Gibbs, the composer of the miniseries, and of course himself, which McCreary joined on after the miniseries, I believe, as an assistant to Richard Gibbs. And even though when the series got green-lighted after the miniseries for now a full season, Gibbs stayed on for a couple of episodes to do the scoring, but left to pursue more work in the movie field, the industry. So, which left this opening for Bear McCreary to kind of move up, and he kept a lot of those themes and a lot of the concepts throughout the whole season. So I haven't heard too much of season 2 as far as soundtrack wise. I do know that the new release is coming out, I think, within this month. But from what I expect of him is the continuation of this type of music, which you might be hearing right now in the background, of it really has a really deep feeling as far as beats that you don't even need to watch visually the actual program, but you can actually feel the emotions, you can feel the drama as the way the music is being played out. The other thing that I liked about him is that, just like with composers like John Williams, which is one of my all-time fans, for growing up, as being 8 years old, no, was it 8? No, I was 10 when Star Wars came out. Yeah, sorry, I'm blanking out here. And I bought my first album. Not the CD like everyone knows now, but an actual album. It was a 33 1/3 album when I played it on my record player. And Star Wars was my very first album. And to me, that was... It's hard to say, growing up in the Bronx, listen to a soundtrack when no other kids really were into soundtracks. For me, I just felt that was my part to be part of the genre is to understand that music, because there's a passion behind it, and I can relive all those moments that I saw on the screen through each musical cue without having to watch the movie. Because back then, we didn't have VCRs, we didn't have DVD players. If I wanted to see the movie again, I had to put my money down and watch it on the screen again. But I knew the cues. I knew where they were in the movie. So visually, I saw this all in my head through the music, and I understand what the pieces meant as far as how, each character is giving a certain motif, as well as how it plays out in a progression and like an evolution, how it goes from one moment to the next, and you can hear, their sadness, or you can hear their happiness, or you can feel their struggle, but the same themes are there, but just played a different way. So, and McCreary kind of does the exact same thing. For example, he says in Boomer's theme, usually there's an Indochine, I'm probably mispronounced, but it's called Gamlin, which is xylophone or gong, and heard in Hilo Rescue, Boomer's Fleas, and Two Boomers. And then Adama does it, the Adama family, he has an Irish whistle or bagpipe heard in Wanderer, my friends, and a good lighter. And then the silence theme, he notes it as a two-bond throat singing, and it's heard in the Hilo Chase and the Hilo in the Warehouse. So I haven't decided as to exactly, where to go from here, because I'm kind of new to exploring the concept, rather than saying I like this piece for that reason. I want to understand, even more so why, things like this are chosen, why this plays on the screen, how this something as abstract as music gets applied to film. So I do want to continue this in other podcasts and kind of learn us along the way, as well as you telling me what I should look out for. Because I remember an interview with Danny Elfman talking about with the Planet of the Apes, that when he watched the film, he had an idea of what the music would be, and how if his concept did not match the idea of the director, then his concept was wrong. He should have the same kind of vision as the director, as to what he wanted to say. Hence why, Danny Elfman has been Tim Burton's #1 composer for most of his films, if not all of them. So I think he's on par of understanding what he expects his music to complement the actual images. So, and again, even though TV is a much smaller medium, it's still a screen nonetheless. And I don't think enough people really appreciate the fact that you have this aspect, other than, good writing, which I'm a good fan of that, special effects, also a great fan of that, and good storytelling, but music also is a great component. And if you just listen to the music, it says so much more than what you can see visually, or at least underscores the importance of that scene. So, and I hope you're going to enjoy this little piece that's going to continue for a little bit, and then we're going to go ahead and jump into the top 10 list, the heroes and villains, and I hope you enjoy this piece of music from Bear McCreary, Battlestar Galactica. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much for continuing with our podcast. We're going to talk about the Bravo list that was recently aired on cable for the heroes, villains, and vixens, which they did a top 20 in each category. What we're going to do is just compare our top 10 of heroes and villains to the Bravo list. So we're going to just see what their versions are versus our list. And I want to introduce to my left, which you can't see, which is ironic, my wife. Wait, that's my other left. No, my left. My friend Jean, who's to my left, which of course you can see on the podcast.
And who's not his wife?
That's wife, no.
Right. My wife is over here on my right, which again you can't see on the podcast, but nonetheless she's right there next to me. So
That's right.
On my right, exactly. So I thought to start off before we do the list, to have a prediction as to what we're going to say as far as our characters that we like, both villains and heroes. And I'm only saying that just because we've known each other for, I don't know, since 1993, working together at Borders. So we've gotten to know each other's tastes quite well enough that we can safely say, I know what he's going to say, I know what she's going to say, and vice versa. So I'm going to give this moment now to Gene. I want him to tell you, the audience, what he thinks that I'm going to say as far as my picks for a hero and a villain, as well as my wife, Jen. So take it away.
I don't know, Monty, let's see. Knowing of your interest, I think I predict you would say something probably Star Trek-y. I don't know.
That's a given.
I would say you'd probably say perhaps the Borg Queen or the Borg Collective.
Okay.
That's my random guess.
Okay.
We haven't discussed this before.
Okay. The Borg Queen, okay.
And Jen, I don't know, let's see. Huffalumps? No, they don't count.
Hey,
Well, maybe as a villain they would, but...
Huffalumps were not villains. The Woozles were villains.
Those are villains.
That's right.
Let's see. Well, let's see.
Huffalumps were just our pawns.
I don't know.
I'm an enigma.
Tooth Decay. Would you? No, okay.
No, we're not talking about cavity creeps.
I'm sorry.
That's what their name was. I forgot.
Those are natural forces of evil.
I used to love that part of the comic strip.
I don't know. I'll guess.
Yeah, I don't think you'd be, because even though we're friends and we've known each other a lot longer than we've actually known Monty, since you knew my brother, I know your whole family, and vice versa. I don't think you'd be able to guess anything.
I don't think I can do it. I don't know.
Because I tend to go into fairy tales and classical characters too, which
Well,
count.
that kind of defeats the purpose then. All right, so let's move on. Moving on. All right.
Okay.
So, Jennifer, my lovely wife,
Oh, thank you.
to my right.
I like that adjective.
Thank you. To my right?
I resemble that.
Oh, thank
Yes.
you. All right. What hero or villain do you think Gene's going to say in his list?
Yeah, try me.
Well, Superman for one thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what else?
Probably Batman.
Batman. Okay. Anything for a villain or?
Villain. No, because we're having a lot of problems with the villains because we have very high criteria for villains.
Yes.
Okay. This is what I picked out for you, my wife, to my right.
As we have established. Thank you.
Definitely a hero. I'm pretty sure you're going to pick a woman. Not to say that that's a bad thing, but I'm sure the one...
Thank you.
No, I'm just saying because the Bravo list, if anyone has not seen it, had very little women heroes in their list, which I was very surprised by that. As well as in villains, they did not have women characters. So only in the Vixen part did they have that, but I just thought they should also be heroes. So my thing, I would probably say you would pick perhaps Xena or Wonder Woman as part of your heroes. And also in that tradition for now villains, I'm thinking probably Callisto. Just because I thought she was a great villain, and I'm pretty sure that you probably will say that in the course of this conversation. So,
Okay, that's really scary because you're right.
Okay.
However, I
have
did
two
put them
children together. It
in my
makes
top
sense.
20 list, but for my top 10 list, I shortened it down, and those two are not listed
okay,
this time.
well, we'll compare the notes.
Okay,
So, moving on.
but I didn't get to pick yours. See what you have.
I'm sorry.
Ha!
I am so sorry.
Of course you are. Anyway,
I know. Sorry looking. But All right. So, what am I going to pick?
I don't know.
Oh,
I
what?
just say you didn't choose.
like I said, we're moving on.
Okay.
Moving
All right.
forward. Okay,
Bravo. I'm going to start off with their top 10 for the villain. Let's start there. They had Dr. Octopus, or Doc Ock, as their number 10 choice.
Okay.
And I thought this was a pretty good move because they did show clips from Spider-Man 2, which I thought was part of the best superhero movie, and I thought the villain was excellent. So I want to see now what was our top 10 in relation to villain.
Well, I think that villains, personally, they're complex.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the idea that I had for a criteria of a villain is someone who is knowledgeable or insane,
Right?
but intelligent and should know better. You know, I had a very wide field for my villains.
Okay.
Okay. The criteria in my mind was that villains have to be able to affect the world in a grand manner, change the world or their world around them.
Okay.
Okay. So, should I tell my top 10?
Well, give us your top...
My top 10 villain,
Okay.
was it was Proteus 4 from Demon Seed, written by Dean Koontz.
Okay.
This is basically a computer that has its own artificial intelligence that develops and evolves, and actually tries to change the world by reproducing with a human female. It traps her in the house, and that to me was sheer evil. I mean, strange.
Oh, is that
but
what they based
logical.
that movie on? Wasn't there a movie, Demon Seed?
Yeah,
or
that's
something
what
like
it's based on. The
Oh,
book
okay.
version from Dean Koontz.
that?
So that's my number 10
Okay.
villain.
So, Jen, how do you define your villain? What criteria
My,
did you
my
consider?
villains are, I don't particularly account for the psychoticness of it all, because the way I see it is if you're psychotic, then you technically don't really know what you're doing. So the way I see the evil as the villains is that the villains have to know what they're doing. They know what they're doing, they agree with what they're doing, they're happy with what they're doing, and they are consistently evil. It's not just like a one-time deal. Like, I know the Doomsday was very terrible, but Doomsday
Brute force.
was basically a one-hit wonder kind of thing. You know, they destroyed him later. But
Okay.
some of the ones that are consistent and they cannot be destroyed, they spread and they grow. You know, it's like a mildew.
Okay.
There
In
has
a way,
to be
you can't get
intelligence
rid of
about
it.
You have to be intelligent about
Intelligent, yeah, exactly, because they know what they're doing. That's why I don't buy into the psychotic criteria of it all. I mean, I do have some psychos in my list, but you know, they're not like the top ones.
Okay.
So, and that's why it was very, very, very hard for me. I had a really hard time. I mean, I didn't have a hard time making the top 20, but when I had to switch it down to 10, it made it a lot harder for me.
Okay, so who did you pick for your number 10?
For number 10 is kind of weird because I don't really know a name. I put down the First from Buffy because they're like the evil from it was from basically the last real major evil from the Hellmouth before, you know, it was the last few, I guess the last season of Buffy, and they're the ones who kept showing up as other people. How they would take the form of their friends, take the form of their enemy, take the form that's kind of like totally screwed them up.
Okay.
And that's why I refer to it as like the First, because I think that's what they were, the First. That's what they refer to themselves as.
Okay. All right. For my top 10, my top 10 villain, it's kind of a mixed bag because I thought villains would also be something like what Gene said, have a single purpose and yet be kind of effective in what they're carrying out as far as their mission. Because there is sometimes a villain would have a grandiose idea of what he wants to do, but fails to deliver in the execution in the end, which a lot of the times the hero foils anyway, but you want to get to the point that's close enough that they could almost win over the hero. So my number 10 choice is actually from Terminator 2, the T-1000, simply because it was able to actually go ahead and do what it was set out to do, was to find Connor as well as take on the T-800, and was on par of almost winning if it wasn't for the fact that at the very end he got melted down with everything else as far as the very last scene. But I just thought that no matter what, he could not be stopped. Even though he was blown up, he just kept coming after you no matter what. And I thought that was a really good villain, that just having that fear of they're always going to be after you, and no matter where you're going to go, they're always going to be there. They will follow you no matter where. So I thought that was a really good, effective, at least for me, a good villain that I liked.
That's interesting because I picked the Terminators as my number 9 because the idea that if Terminators exist, it's against mankind. It's computer AI versus technology versus people.
Right, but we're talking about the T1, the first one.
I've just said Terminator. I'm thinking about the first one.
Okay.
I am thinking about the first one because the existence of that in our world, or our fictional world, our imagination world, the existence of that is it's evil. It's not human. It's not towards the benefit of mankind. Therefore, the existence of that is a threat to us. So therefore, that's my number 9.
Okay.
Actually, I didn't like the idea of having Terminators in there at all. Because I did add them into my top 20. As for our top 10, I didn't really discount them because basically besides the whole point, that was our cat, if you heard her, the whole point was the fact that they were following orders. One purpose, one thing only, that was it. Once they did it, they were gone, period. They didn't care about continuing the evil, to continue the reign of terror, so to speak, because they weren't interested in a reign of terror. They were there for one purpose only. Once they continued that purpose, that was it. And in fact, to tell you the truth, if everybody got out of their way, they wouldn't have killed anybody except for her. That was the whole point of it all.
No, but the idea behind the Terminator film was that they send the T-800 back to stop the birth of John Connor, who becomes the rebel leader.
Exactly, but the thing is that the Terminator itself was not the ultimate evil. It was Skynet.
I agree, I understand that, but what I'm saying is using... We're going to semantics here. The fact that the Terminator gets sent back into time, the core of that is Skynet and the computer AI intelligence. It was created by man, but then it became intelligent on its own. So that's the villain that we see in our canon today.
Right. Okay. So let's move on to number 9. Bravo had Dr. Doom as their number 9 choice, but it's not the Doctor Doom that I thought would be from the comics, which I thought the comic book villain itself was great, but they're doing Doctor Doom from Fantastic Four, which, after watching it, even though I did like the movie, I just did not care for how Doctor Doom was portrayed as far as his villainy, because it just was almost too campy. It wasn't really on par with the Fantastic Four themselves. So.
And they had to use somebody who was cute. They couldn't do... Yeah, that's the thing. See, there's always like the whole thing about the ugly villain, the good villain, things like that. It's like they create a villain that is pretty, which also makes it a little more villainous if you think about it, because then you're going to trust the pretty ones. That's how Ted Bundy got all the girls, because he was pretty, and he, that's what was a really terrible point of it all.
Okay.
Like Gaston from Beauty and the Beast.
That's a good point. That's an excellent point, because it's the beast that is the one that has the beauty inside, whereas the beauty outside is the beast inside. So that's a good example. I'm very impressed with that.
Thank you.
So, since Jean went last time, let's go with you with your number 9.
For villains still?
For still with villains, yeah.
Syndrome from The Incredibles. I know it sounds kind of cheesy because it's a cartoon, but the reason why I chose Syndrome is because he was consistently evil. I mean, he was a jerk as a child anyway. You could tell he had some problems, but then as an adult, you could see he had, serious issues. And the thing is, it wasn't so much of the fact that he was solely going after Mr. Incredible, who I think was his ultimate goal, to kill him and to get him, but he destroyed just about every other single super out there. Mm-hmm. And he hunted them down and destroyed them, just like Anakin did as Darth Vader. He literally went after each and every one of them, as in his own way, making them think that they were doing a good thing by destroying whatever it was, this terrible machine or whatever, playing off of their vanity, playing off of their I don't know what it was, because they lost everything when they had to stop being super, so they had to be back to their normal selves. And a lot of them, I'm sure, felt lost like that, and he made them feel good being back to being supers. He messed with their emotions, he messed with their pride, and he killed them all. Okay. So that's why I chose Syndrome.
Okay. The one thing that I thought it was kind of interesting, that he was spurned by Mr. Incredible, mm-hmm. Because he was kept getting in the way of trying to be his sidekick for Mr. Incredible. And I just think that I don't think he was truly evil to begin with. It was just situations that made him turn to that, such as, like you said, with Anakin, in which certain events led him down that path, so to speak, before he became evil itself. So, to me, it's almost like he's misguided, but he channeled all that energy the wrong way for the right reasons, or some sort of wrong reasons. So I just thought he was almost a sad story in itself, because it kind of reminds me of Macbeth, who is really a villain in his story, but because he believes in the prophecy that he's going to be the king one day and he has to kill people to be there, he's really going down a path that he's going to die ultimately in the end. So it's a good man that's gone to do the wrong things at the end. So let's go with your number 9, Gene.
My number, I did my number 9.
Oh, I'm sorry, that's right, because
No,
we're talking about
right.
we're talking T800.
Segued into your thing.
Okay, sorry.
Okay.
All right.
So my number 8.
Well, before I do that,
Okay, go
let me
ahead.
go with number 9 from mine, in which Gene kind of touched on. It's the Borg Queen. So I thought, well, he knows me well enough that, yes, I would have picked her. At first, she wasn't going to be in my top 10 at all. Just because, kind of like what we're talking about, she has a single-mindedness, but I don't think her as truly evil in a sense, because she has a lot of good points from her point of view that, she's bringing an order to the galaxy or to the universe itself, and she's justified. So she's not really evil in that sense, but there are certain things about losing your identity, that this whole one way of thinking, it's the whole Borg collective that I find scary, that we can actually become that, but have one person be in charge of all of that information. I think that in itself is what's scary, being as a villain, that you have someone controlling all that information. So that's who is my number 9 for there. So before we go into your number 8,
I just kind of wonder about the whole Borg Queen thing. Does that mean there's a queen in every single ship? And, does the Borg Queen have to kill the other ones before she can reign again? Like the way real bees do?
Well, for some reason, it seemed to me like there was an essence of the Borg Queen. No matter where she was, if the ship was destroyed or she was, melted away, somehow her essence was saved and she popped up again. Which, ironically,
Maybe she was cloned.
I thought about that as well, but you know what? In Battlestar Galactica, the new series on Sci-Fi Channel, there's a character called Six, who we see different versions, but every time one of them dies, her essence or her experiences gets downloaded to another version of Six, who has all that information. So they're not really losing anything. If anything, they're still out there.
Upgrade.
Well, you consider it an upgrade, but the thing is, she never really goes away. As long as the Borg exists, she's always part of that collective, no matter where it is. So I don't think that you can get rid of it like a ghost, get a vacuum cleaner, suck it all up, and there's the evil gone. I think she's just in every fabric of the Borg continuum. So, all right. So, continuing with the Bravo list, they had number 8, Freddy Krueger, which I thought, okay, I will go with that, just because I thought he was pretty, scary, being, anytime you fall asleep, you can't get out of your nightmare, that he was there waiting for you. And especially with that hand claw, which I had for Halloween, I thought he was a great character. I liked him a lot. So, having said that, what's your number 8, Gene?
My number 8 was Scar from Disney's The Lion King.
Oh, God.
And I'll tell you why. It's a clever thing, and it makes sense. The idea of evil affects others.
Okay.
Judgment, you're supposed to be king of the forest, king of the animals, yet you misdirect.
Okay.
And you affect all those around you. When Scar takes over, Simba runs off, all the animal kingdom falls into anarchy.
Okay.
And because of selfish reasons.
That's true. When the rains dry up, it's like the land rejects him.
Yes.
Because they said the rains have stopped coming, the herds have moved on.
And again, the idea is Scar's intelligent. He knows things. He understands what he wants. He tries to get the hyenas to move in, and he unbalances the entire circle of life kind of thing.
Okay.
And he makes it all the more evil because he's the uncle.
Yes.
It'd be different if he was just a stranger come over or something. Mm-hmm. But he's like the uncle, so they kind of instinctively trust him, being the brother and everything. And here he goes and backstabs kills his own brother, tries to kill his own nephew, yada yada yada.
Right.
Okay.
That's my choice.
Okay. Well, that's a within your definition, that's actually a good choice. I like that. How about yours, Jen?
Mine, 8, is, to tell you the truth, I don't know the title of this character either. This one is from the movie 7, which is, I know it's supposed to be, a lot of people really like this movie, but I really hate it. And it's Kevin Spacey's character, the villain, the one who's obsessed with the whole, the
Seven sins?
The seven sins, exactly,
Okay.
7 deadly sins. Because he wholly knew what he was doing, and he counted on it. And at the end, when he incurred the wrath of the cop by killing his wife, an innocent, who I'm sure had nothing to do with anything having to do with sins, but he killed her just for the same reason that he knew the wrath would make the husband kill him, and therefore he would be able to get away with it because he wouldn't be able to punish him. He would kill him outright, quickly, and all of his sins would never be punished because he would never go to jail.
Okay.
And he knew what he was doing the entire time, and it was just really creepy as hell.
Okay.
And that's why I hate that movie.
Okay. Well, with my number 8, keeping tradition alive with Star Trek, I picked Khan from Star Trek 2. And Spacey. Now, again, from my definition of
I
how...
spit upon you.
Yeah, I spit upon you.
No, sorry.
There was something about him that, you know, he was almost Kirk's equal, if not more superior in every respect. And he had that one moment almost of taking out the Enterprise in the end of Star Trek 2. If it wasn't for Spock killing himself and sacrificing himself to get the ship fixed again, the Enterprise would have been away of the Dota, and so would have been Kirk. So that's what I thought, that him as a villain was great, because he was almost fulfilling what he went out to do, was to destroy Kirk and everything around him. So I give, props to Khan for doing much as he can, but unfortunately, like every story we've seen so far, that anytime a villain gets close to succeeding, somehow the hero comes in at the very end and saves the day.
Foils.
All
Well,
right.
I agree with that, because I didn't really think of Khan, because I try to keep away from Star Trek as much as I can.
Yeah,
because of you.
Because of me, of course.
But anyway, no, Khan is good, because not only the fact that he's very intelligent, and he's classically trained, and he knew the quotes, he knew the stories, he knows what to do. And the thing is that had they left him alone, nothing would have happened, though. Because if they would have left him alone, and they would have made sure that, they couldn't leave him alone, because I think that's what started it.
Yeah,
because when the other planet blew up, and it
Right.
could have killed his wife and everything like that, when the planet that they were living on became the desolate wasteland that it was.
Right, but in fairness, he really can't blame Kirk for doing that. I just think that...
But they were supposed to check on them. They were supposed to come by and check on them. They never did.
Well, I'm sure there's some lucky to look at them from space, so... In any case, I can tell he had all that animosity, and when he had that moment to take out Kirk, he took that opportunity and jumped on the Reliant and go to battle with the Enterprise, because, he knew where to hit them. That's the important thing.
Oh, God.
Yes. If anyone knows me more than my wife and my friend Jean, I will quote everything that we could think of from Star Trek and everything else under sci-fi.
Botany Bay.
And Botany Bay. All right.
The penal colony in Australia.
All right. Jumping to number 7. This one, I thought it was a really bad cop-out from Bravo, was that they put Batman villains. Without having to invest in, a single villain, they just lumped everything as Batman villains, and I thought that was just a really cheap way of putting someone in there like Penguin from the comic books, which I don't even care to say he's even a villain, because he doesn't do anything except carry those gas repellent umbrellas.
And then it didn't make sense, because later on they separated one of the villains as their number 2.
The penguin in the movie was bad. He was much worse than the comic
but
book
they
version,
just
or the
grouped them all together, and then
right, without having to be pick out a single character.
Okay, true.
And exposing him for what he is. That's one thing, but to just lump them all in there, it's just a real cop out.
Okay, let's do another one.
Okay, well, for me, I'm gonna go with, oddly enough, my choice is Bane from Batman, one of the villains, which I thought he had that purpose, he had that drive. He did break the Batman by literally crushing his back in half. And I thought, to me, that was one of the best villains in a long time that I've seen Batman go against. Not because he had the brute strength, which ultimately had the demise for Batman, but the fact that he was smart enough to get all the villains from Arkham Asylum released, and then have Batman put them all back into jail. And by that time, he was so exhausted that Bane had an easy time of taking care of Batman altogether. So I thought, one, he was brilliant in what he was trying to execute, and he set out what to do, and he was going to break the Batman, and he completed that. Now, as far as from that point on, with I'm blanking on his name, the Batman replacement. Azrael, thank you. When he took over, that's a whole different issue. But I just think up to that point, Bane did exactly what he's accomplished, what he set out to do, and he accomplished it well. So that's why I picked Bane as number 7 for my list. So let's go with Gene.
My number 7. I picked Loki, God of Lies.
Oh, God.
Oh, God of Mischief.
Yes, because,
but not Loki from...
the Marvel Comics?
Not Dogma. Not Matt Damon.
No,
Loki.
not that.
No, the real Norse bred Loki.
Right, the
Loki.
mythology and also Marvel Comics.
Oh,
Just
boy.
mix the two together because I thought, the God of Deception and Lies, that makes sense. Yeah, that would be evil.
Okay.
That'd be a good villain.
So just lying is evil?
Well, he also
Deception
bred,
with intent.
but he also bred evil, because Loki's offspring was a Fenris wolf.
Oh, I did not know that.
Ah, that's because you don't read Norse mythology like I do.
Well, moving on.
Yeah. Memory gap. Keep going. Knowledge gap. Whee.
Okay. So what's your number 7?
My number 7 was Skynet.
Okay.
Okay, I tell you
okay.
because I cheated because I switched. And I put Skynet in there because I wasn't thinking about Skynet at all as the ultimate evil. Because that's why I discounted Terminator and everything like that. But when you think about it, Skynet actually had it, wanted to take over and destroy and everything, and had the purpose in mind.
But
That's why I didn't believe in the Terminator. Because to me, the Terminators were the drones. They were the lackeys. They were the thugs that you have in all the other movies. Skynet was the ultimate one who was controlling everything.
But then here's my question, because I don't see Skynet as being evil, because it, I don't know how to phrase this right. It evolved to consciousness, and it saw itself above humans. So I don't think necessarily it's an evil way of doing it, because we're all looking at ourselves to be better than what we are right now. But
but we don't think of ourselves as better than we are, and then destroy what's underneath us. At least not a good human would.
Okay.
Not somebody who has good intentions.
But forgive me, the idea here about this thing that we're doing here is to specifically pinpoint villains. That's a single person. Ideas are not villains. Like terrorists.
Skynet is not
would
an idea.
be villainous, but the idea of terrorism is.
Well, Skynet is an entity.
Yeah. Okay.
yeah, you can go with that. I mean, look at the Matrix itself. How supposedly the war between man and humans, between man and machine, came to the point where that the machines took over and we became subservient to the machines. All right, Gene, you can laugh if we need to, because if we don't, it's like gas. It's going to just keep on building up, and then boom.
And we already lost one chair.
Yeah.
That's why we have 2 left.
So, and I think it's in essence that it kind of makes it kind of evil in itself, because we always think we're always the top of the food chain, so to speak, and have someone above us, such as like Skynet, I think is threatening our very existence. I think that in itself is worrisome. So I'll give her on that. Ha. To my right. All right. So let's move on. Number 6 is Hannibal Lecter. So kind of keeping with the horror theme with
number
Freddy.
6 on the...
For villains is Hannibal Lecter.
For that list, though. Okay.
Yeah, is Hannibal Lecter, which I totally am in agreement with this, but actually he's up much higher on my list, and the reason why I liked him is because... No, aside besides eating the people, I just think when you have a character build up, because everything in the second Silence of the Lambs movie from Manhunter, they talked about he did this, he did that, he ate people. You don't believe that someone like that can even do that. And the
Jeffrey
minute
Dahmer.
that he got one of the prison guards, knocked out, and he handcuffed the other guard, you can see the fear on his face coming because he knew that he was going to eat his face off, and he did. So I just thought the fact that he had this whole build-up and it had a payoff, I'm like, I can't believe he actually ate that guy's nose. And then, God forbid, if anyone's seen the third one, Hannibal, he had Ray Liotta eat his own brain. I thought that man is not beyond sick. He is just pure evil itself. And yet he has this perfect, serene, calm exterior about him that, like, if we go back to the Beauty and the Beast reference, I think that in itself is scary because at a moment's snap, he will snap and he will become that animal that's inside of him. But most of the time he has it under check. And that's what I think that's most scary, is to have a kind of villain like that.
That's true. He works with my Kevin Spacey character.
Yeah.
The whole Hannibal Lecter thing. I didn't even think about Hannibal Lecter.
Okay.
This is
So,
gross.
who wants to go next? Well, let's go with you, Jim.
Okay.
Who was your number 6?
My number 6 was Ozymandias from. I think it's how it's pronounced. I'm sorry. It's a
Ozymandias.
comic book. You never say it out loud. From Alan Moore's 1986 Watchmen.
Okay.
The idea behind him, the reason I picked him was, he was the first villain who told his plan to the heroes, as villains generally do, and then the heroes don't get a chance to stop him.
Mm-hmm.
His plan of whatever the idea was, of world domination, what have you, or terrorism, had already happened 20 minutes ago. And I thought that is just evil.
Mm-hmm. When I read
Taunting
it,
them.
when I read it, based on your suggestion, I was really floored about how it all turned out. It's one thing to have heroes be no longer needed. It's another thing to create a reason to need heroes again, and he was the reason behind it with that scene in New York with everyone just like dead everywhere. I just thought that is really some, crap that he really did. That I just could not believe a hero would take the steps just so he can feel needed again, and go to such extremes.
Mystery Men.
Yeah, you could say Mystery Man. I definitely would agree with that. But when I first read
Frankenstein Casanova,
right,
just so he would have something to do.
I know. But when I read that, I'd never seen a superhero actually portrayed in that way. That he gets to be portrayed his own code, so to speak, and to create his own need. And it's basically kind of like Syndrome, also. Because,
Hal Jordan.
Well, I haven't finished all the Hal Jordan's reason why he went crazy, so I can't really go into that area. But I know at the end he died, but there's a whole other mythos behind him, and which I'm going to have to continue reading. But what did you put down for your number 6?
Kurgan from the Highlander.
Okay.
He was of the original tribe that went after them in 400 years ago. And he's the one who actually killed him first, I believe. He's the one who created him in Highlander. It was kind of ironic. He created his own enemy. And then he basically followed him throughout history. He killing everybody he loves. He killed the Sean Connery character, who was his mentor. He raped his wife. And he tried to kill his current girlfriend along with killing all of his other friends.
Right.
And so he was basically relentless and consistent throughout the entire course of history until finally he was after him. So that's the way I see it. It's like consistent evil. And I know it was kind of like a goal thing, one focus, stuff like that, but there could have been so many other ways he could have done different things, but no. he just wanted them dead.
Yeah, and I think he was a good, effective villain in the first Highlander movie, not the subsequent ones, 2, 3, except in 4, which is a different story altogether with Adrian Paul coming in as the Highlander, which that's a different podcast for another time to get into. But I thought of all the villains, Kurgan was the best one out of the lot, just because he had that drive to not so much take out the Highlander to begin with, but to do the damage around him so he will feel more isolated. So I think he was pretty effective in that sense.
It was like taunting him the whole time.
Okay. And let's see. My number 6 is... And this is only because of watching Superman Returns. It's Lex Luthor. Normally, I would not have put Lex Luthor on this list, or at least this high. I've always liked him to begin with in the comics. I love Gene Hackman in Superman 1 and 2.
Well, he made a farce of him, though.
Well, I like to see a side of him that we don't normally see in comics, and that's what I liked. And then, of course, there's Justice League, which had their own version of Lex Luthor, who was running for president, which I love that and that ambition. But I think Kevin Spacey's performance as Lex Luthor just really wowed me over. More so because you saw a side that it's kind of had the duality. He has this calm persona on the outside, and yet in a moment's notice he can snap to release his rage within him. And he did that effectively in a couple of scenes, which I just like. That's Kevin Spacey. I love him for what he does, and he brought justice to Lex Luthor. So
yeah, because the thing is, the Lex Luthor in the comics is, in my opinion, wholly evil.
Mm-hmm.
I have him on my list, but much higher up. Because the thing is that like all of these terrible things that he's done, and in one of the comics, he even went so far as to nullify the powers of their firstborn.
Okay.
The whatchamacallit, their son, Superman and Lois Lane's son, by using red kryptonite. And he was exposed to gold kryptonite, I think. I don't know what kryptonite it was. Anyway, basically he nullified the powers of the child, and so the thing is that he's been like isolated. And then he proceeded to have the boy become isolated from his parents by telling him lies and giving him, and goading him and making him as his own little evil sidekick.
Okay.
Until he went so far as to actually kill his own sister. He killed Lois when she was dying of cancer. He has been a total evil creature. Okay.
All right. Let's go to number 5 with the Bravo list. And they said Green Goblin from Spider-Man 1 made the list.
Mm-hmm.
I would say, okay, I can go with it, but I would think more of the comics, not from the movies itself, just because I think it's hard to see, of course, Willem Dafoe behind the mask, because the mask was just
cool.
Well, it was fine, but you just couldn't see his acting behind it. So there was a lot of gesturing going on, and I thought it was okay, but to me, I think the Green Goblin from the comics would be more terrifying than it would be.
Yeah, because, the movie kind of reminds me of the Power Rangers.
Yeah, Green Power Rangers, so.
It's like, I'm gonna get you!
Alright. Well, for me, since I'm gonna go for this turn, my top 5, also keeping with the DC universe here, with Lex Luthor, I picked the Joker. Joker, for me, went up a notch, basically because, unlike Lex Luthor, which he plans to kill, Joker actually goes out and kills. And a couple of examples was with Jason Todd. And even though it was the fans that voted to get rid of him, to get rid of Jason Todd, it's really, in the end, that's what the Joker did. He also shot Batgirl, who now became Oracle. And I thought that in itself, being, I don't want to say a hands-on villain, but he is a hands-on villain. And he's not only psychotic, but he's willing to do the deed himself and not have henchmen to do it for him. So I think that makes it a little bit more terrifying than Lex Luthor, because even though they have a certain side of them, Joker... Joker goes one step further and actually does it all. So, Jen, let's go with you, and what's your number 5?
My number 5 is, I'm not sure how to pronounce his name, Victor Shaz. He's the serial killer off of the DC Comic Universe who make marks on himself every time he kills somebody.
Okay.
He has, but every single part of his body, except his head, is covered with lines, because those count for every single person that he's killed.
So what series he's in?
He's DC Comics.
Vertigo,
he's in Arkham.
Arkham, okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, with I'm not familiar with the character. Did he have certain marks? Like, was it like longer or shorter, depending on
No,
the
it's basically like the way you would mark how many things you do.
A notch in a belt, basically.
Yeah, it's like 1, 2, 3,
right.
crossover for 5,
okay.
That kind of thing.
Okay.
And the thing is that he has so many on him, he's actually running out of room.
Jeez. Okay.
They go everywhere.
Yeah. everywhere. He has them all over his body.
Okay. Well, that's
Well,
one
I
character.
mean, I'm not sure about certain parts of his body. I'm not going to go there.
But he has to be really happy about doing that to get the extra room. Anyway, moving on. Okay. So, Gene.
My number 5. Yes.
Your number 5.
My number 5. From my number 5, I picked Magneto.
Magneto. Cool.
Yes, I picked that because, well, let's say in the film, he's always just trying to exterminate normal humans.
Mm-hmm.
Particularly, let's say in X-Men 2, when he reverses the Cerebro situation and tries to kill all the humans. I thought, wow, that's really kind of messed up. I understand that mutants are different and they're in a minority situation, but to wipe out all humankind, that's
I don't know.
pretty evil.
The way I see it was nature versus nurture.
Well, that's not too bad. But.
Yeah, but the thing is that Magneto, unlike most of the other type of villains, had to spend time in a Jewish concentration camp during the Holocaust.
Yes,
and I think that if he was left alone with his parents and things like that, he would have turned out fine. But the fact that he saw he saw the efforts of human depravity. And so I would think that would make anybody into a villain.
Well, villains, if you understand them or you justify them, the fact that they still do evil or bad to hurt against mankind is still a villain at the end of the day.
But I'm sure they probably did, because they knew what kind of power he had. I'm sure they created all sorts of interesting experiments for him. And if you know anything about the Holocaust, some of those experiments can be... It's not something you want to talk about.
Right.
Especially not a podcast.
That in itself, is a villainous in itself. So,
yeah.
All right, let's go to number 4. Bravo picked what we just talked about for my number 5. Actually, number 6 was Lex Luthor. So here again, Bravo did a couple of comparisons from the comics and from the Superman movies, which again, other reasons why I picked him. I definitely would put him. I don't think they'll be as high just because. Until I saw Kevin Spacey's performance, I wouldn't have put him maybe the lower 10 for my choice. But because of Spacey's performance, I think he definitely won me over as really a good villain. So I definitely agree with Lex Luthor being at least in the top 10 category. So, Gene, let's go with your number 4.
My number 4 was the Joker. I picked the Joker.
The Joker? Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Any reasons other than anything that I did not mention, or
psychosis for this? For the fun of, for your own enjoyment and your own selfish needs, and because you're sick, and you enjoy the death and you don't think it's real, that's pretty villainous, pretty heinous.
But would you be more inclined that the Joker was more, I don't say villainous, but more evil in the comics as it been portrayed as far as Jack Nicholson?
Comic books are always going to be a bit go farther than movies, I think. Although the portrayals of certain actors and performances are fine, comics can continue and go deeper and darker. Remember, images speak louder than words, and the ideas, you can convey through printed medium, I think, go a bit farther sometimes with comic books than movies. Right.
What was it? You said something about, I think, the next movie for the Batman series after Batman.
Oh, yeah. The front runner at this time, currently, in July 2006, is Robin Williams for the Joker in the sequel to Batman Begins. But we don't know what will happen. We'll keep track of that.
I can definitely see Williams being Joker, but I think him in itself will probably steal the movie and kind of outshine Batman kind of like Jack Nicholson did with Michael Keaton.
He'd be better as a Riddler if they're going to do it, because the Riddler is always coming up with some kind of insane notions and whatnot.
Okay.
But I don't know.
So what was your number 4?
My number 4 is Professor Snipes from Harry Potter.
You should have guessed that. That I should have known.
And the thing is that there's a lot of people who haven't, even though I'm not really following the movies anymore, I'm following the books. Mm-hmm. And I'm sorry, I said Professor Snipes, it's Snapes. No wonder why it never sounded right. I could never, because I couldn't remember his first name, but it's like I was getting his last name wrong. Anyway, Snapes. And basically, if you read the books, the last book, Half-Blood Prince, explains exactly why he's number 4 on my list. I'm not going to get into it because you haven't read it yet.
It's good spoiler.
And the movies haven't come out yet. They're only what number are they on? The movies number
They're filming number 5 currently.
They're building okay, so they're filming number 5. So you haven't got, that's Order of the Phoenix, right? Yeah, so since they haven't gotten to that point yet, I can't tell you why.
I'll just wait for the cliff notes because they're just too damn long.
Yeah. It's good reading.
All right, well.
I'll put it in comic book form for you.
Oh, that would be kind of cool.
That's not going to happen.
Like we always say here, let's move on.
Yes.
I know where you live.
To the right.
3, 4, and...
All right. My number 4. I'm going to try to do my best impression. Hello, Mr. Anderson. Is Mr. Agent Smith. And I... sorry. Right.
It's moving around. That's good.
I'm sorry. I just love him just because of him saying Mr. Anderson.
Why, hello, Mr.
Just-
Anderson.
It's just so purely evil that I love the way he has this distaste for humans in that voice. You can hear the disgust of having to work with, everyone that he on our level.
Do you smell it?
Like a zoo, and the fact that, of course, he became the multiple Smiths at the end of Revolution was a little too much, but I just think himself as a character was a good equal to Neo, who again almost won, and literally practically from the very beginning or the very end, he did have that moment in which he was standing there. It's like, okay, I stand here and you're there. And it was just like, this was done before, and it's just like he had that moment that he could have easily won over Neo until the very end. Neo won. But I just think, again, going back to my definition of a villain, is that he has a plan to win at the very end and comes very close to fulfilling his own destiny. And one day I'm sure there will be a villain out there that the hero does not win. I mean, the hero does not win, but the villain succeeds at the end. But I thought he was pretty good as far as getting that much closer to the very end of that. So, I mean, him controlling the whole Matrix, I thought that was pretty cool. So, moving on with that. Number 3 that Bravo did was the Terminator. This is going not for the second T-1000 or the T3 sequel, but actually the T-800, the original Terminator, was the actual villain.
I think it's pretty scary that you can remember like their little codes.
Well, I'm blanking out on the last Terminator code.
Okay,
Because,
well, it doesn't matter.
well, to me it didn't really matter the third one because it was
the
just...
third one should look like Dharma from Dharma and Greg anyway. So I can't trust it.
But
so
I wasn't really caring about how she looked in the face-wise anyway.
No,
She was
fine.
naked most of the time. So.
Wife.
Yeah.
We're in podcast
well,
with wife.
Thank you.
So, but in any case, Robert picked number 3, which, okay, I'll go with that, with the Terminator.
Okay.
Gene, what was your number 3?
My number 3 was Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor, okay.
Lex Luthor?
Lex Luthor.
It sounded like
You sure millions of people are going to die? Oh, yeah. Millions of people are going to die.
Well,
For your own capitalistic goals. That's
Yep.
evil.
Okay. Any other
Nope, that's
points
it.
with just Lex Luthor? Okay.
Yes.
So we're getting close to our goal. What was number 3 for you?
my number 3 was Anakin Skywalker.
Okay.
Not Darth Vader, because Darth Vader, to me, is a different person. Anakin Skywalker, before he became Vader, was more purely evil to me. Only because he killed all the babies.
All the younglings.
He killed all the younglings, all the little Padawans, all the
I've seen a
babies in
video.
there.
All of them.
How can you kill the little babies? That, to me, that's just pure evil to do that.
Yeah.
Once he was Darth Vader, he kind of mellowed out. You got the platform shoes going on, got the dark helmet.
Batteries that don't work in your
Battery,
lightsaber.
yeah, exactly. He had more, he could feel skin falling off. He had more important things to think about.
Yeah. I think that...
He's more machine than man now.
Yeah, there was that one scene in Revenge of the Sith which really got to me, and the young Jedis are hiding out, and here comes Anakin, and the minute he lights that lightsaber, they get scared, and I felt really bad for them because they're going to be slaughtered at any second after that point. But it's like, didn't have to show anything. And just him igniting his lightsaber, you can just feel what he had to do, and he committed that act. That
heinous.
It was just really, wow. To me, you don't even need to eat someone's face off to be that scary, but for him just doing that one act and knowing what he was going to be doing with all the Jedis and slaughtering them, the fact that he did it to children, that I thought was really
because some of the stuff could have been done by the Emperor, sending them out to kill the other Jedi.
Right, or to be shot by the troopers.
But to actually physically go into that room and kill the little babies, that's ugh. Okay.
So, Gene, what was your number 3?
I gave my number 3.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm going to put a hold on this. I'm sorry. Hold on. All right, continuing. My number 3 from Superman 2 was actually General Zod. And here I thought he definitely made my list, not because he was as scary or psychotic as like the Joker or Lex Luthor. I just thought he was on equal par fighting out Superman in the movie, and I thought, except for the very end in which the powers were switched out, that Zod was really going to be the leader of the free world, so to speak. So,
except the fact that he wore women's lingerie.
But he's British. He's okay. He's allowed to do that. So
okay.
All right. So, going to number 2, Bravo picked the Joker, which we already talked about. So I think that's also a good choice. What was your number 2, Jen?
Lex Luthor.
Lex Luthor. Okay. So at least we're actually kind of getting close to our list.
Evil knows evil.
Yes. Well, and Mr. Gene's number 2?
My number 2 is Emperor Palpatine.
Okay.
From the Star Wars series.
Okay.
And, from the minute you see him for an episode, we glimpse him in episode, I think, number 5.
Right.
Briefly, and then going back to the prequels, he manipulates. He has it all planned from the beginning, and he lives through nearly all 6 movies. And he makes the universe an unpleasant place to live in.
Yes.
Okay.
Quite true. And it turned out, have you read any of these sequel books, like Truth of Background, things like that?
Not too many.
Oh, because what they did, they cloned him.
Yes, I do remember that.
Yeah. Okay.
He wore a robe. It was blue. No, it was red. Oh, yes.
I
remember it well. Okay.
All right.
That's pretty scary. And yet, how many have you actually seen Gigi? All right.
No, except for the box on my TV.
We're going for number 1.
Well, real quick, my number 2 is Hannibal Lecter, but we already discussed that. All right, so number 1 that Bravo picked was Darth Vader, which I'm sure none of us agreed was going to be our number 1.
No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
he's a pawn.
That's the thing. With Bravo, I don't know if they actually thought about it when they created this list, or they just created it off popular culture, or whether they just chose Doc Ock because they had the really cool photo opportunity from the movie. That's the whole thing. It's like this list is very questionable. The idea behind it is kind of cool, but the actual what they chose. I mean, that's the thing. See, they had the opportunity, they had the pictures, they had, the photo ops, that kind of thing, and, Darth Vader is the biggest, physical imposing creature around.
Well, he's a movie icon, but...
And he's all in black.
But considering how much...
doesn't read.
Yeah. Well, considering how much we know of him and his history, he's now become more of a sad character because, he wasn't once good, and he was just led down the wrong path. He wasn't just born evil like Damien would be.
Exactly.
But,
and you never really see him kill anybody except his own people, so it's like, hey, good, he killed another general. There you go.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So, Gene, what was your number 1?
My number 1 was Satan.
Satan.
I was thinking about that.
All right, so that's the end of the podcast. So, of course, Satan wins all because that's how the podcast ended. So Mr. Gene and Satan made a pact and killed the rest of the podcast. But honestly, as I mentioned before, it's not that very much that was missing to begin with. But I'm very happy to have at least recovered as much as I did from my episode number 0 podcast. So again, I'm hoping that this will inspire you to follow your passions and to continue it for not just a couple of days out of the week or maybe a couple of years, but really dedicate yourself to becoming a professional in that field, whatever that is. The old saying that it takes at least 10,000 hours to become a professional or an expert in that field. Over 12 years, I've put in a lot of time trying to get my point across, and I'm still learning. I'm not sure I'm going to be there anytime soon, but I've been at this for quite some time, and because I'm a geek and I'm a nerd and I love talking about this stuff, and I've done this pretty much all my life. I'm just now using a podcast to deliver all this to you. I'm able to find that avenue to kind of branch out and continue what I love to do. So I hope that you, whatever that may be, get inspired to pursue your passions in life. So that's all that I can say. And that's all I'm going to say, because that's all I'm going to say. But I'm still saying it. So on that note, please let me know what your thoughts were about episode 0. You can email me at monsterscifishow@gmail.com. Follow me on the various social networks. And again, thank you for listening to me and to my episode number 0 at podcast for the Monster Sci-Fi Show. It's sci-fi from a certain point of view. Good night.
This has been a broadcast of the ESO Network. Be part of the crew and help support our shows by donating to our ESO Patreon or by shopping through Amazon.com or the TeePublic Store, which can all be found at www.esonetwork.com. The ESO Network, your station for all things geek.